When the PlayStation 1 came out, the controller didn't have dual analog sticks, and when a new genre of games started popping up, this became pretty problematic. I am the Game Collector, and this is Second Opinion Games, and today I look at first-person shooters for the PlayStation 1.
Second Opinion Games.
Let's start things off with a tank game. After all, I'm pretty sure first-person shooters really started to become popular because of a game called Battlezone. It was a vector-based graphic game where you play as a tank blowing up other tanks and things alike. So I thought taking a look at Shellshock for the PlayStation 1 would be a great start. Now, this game looks pretty darn good for a PlayStation 1 game. The draw distance isn't too bad, the pop-in is here, but it's nothing like other consoles before it. So this really stood out to me. Now the controls are a bit wonky because you have to move your turret, and then when you do so, going straight just feels awkward as all heck. So you're gonna probably just drive up to things and fire as fast as possible and hope that you don't get hit, which is a big problem with this game because after 3 hits, you are completely dead. Now you don't just always have to fire your main gun, you could also fire machine guns. Which, what good are machine guns against other tanks? No good at all, so you're going to stick with your main gun for the majority of the time. The learning curve here is pretty steep because of the whole moving your turret thing, so I kind of recommend you stay away from this one, unless you really love your tank games. How about we move on to some walking tanks? That means mechs. Now, this game is Epidemic. It's a story-based game where you play as a guy trying to find the cure to something, I presume. I usually jump past stories in video games, especially when they're first-person shooters. Basically, all I want to see is me in a giant robot suit destroying everything. Now, this game is really cool, especially the music. It is thumping with the bass. However, the sound effects really kind of drowned it out most of the time. You could also trip some alarms that just sound way too loud. I just want to hear the music. Please let me hear the music already. The explosions are all satisfying here, and your mech really feels like a beast as you power through these tight corridors, which is then my biggest problem with the game. Because everything is so darn tight, you can't maneuver the way a mech should be maneuvering. I want to be jumping around and doing all types of crazy stuff, and I just can't do it in this close combat system. Also, the map here is kind of confusing, and it's always rotating around with my ship. I really hate it when developers decide to do this, so I kind of also have to give Epidemic a pass. No, I'd much rather be playing Brama Force, the Assault on Bootlegger 9. Now, this is another mech-based game, only the environments are far more wide open. It's actually more of an action platformer where you try to connect to different terminals. Now, all the levels here are actually really tight and small, so you'd never get too lost. And you do have a map, but you don't need it that often. Also, the explosion sound effects are terrific, and you feel like a total badass as you run through the stage, trying to accomplish many things along the way. Heck, you could be locked in a pressure chamber where then you have to blow yourself out, or then take on other giant tanks or security drones. This is an extremely cool game with only one little problem. Even though you're in a heavily armored giant mech of death, you somehow blow up really, really easily, and your energy doesn't regenerate in between levels also. So you have to be extra careful when you get into any type of encounter. Continuously circle scraping around your opponent seems to be your best shot at survival, but this is an unbelievably fun game, and I'm just surprised not many people have heard of it. But when many people think first-person shooters, they think of heavily armored space marines. So how about Armor Marines Project S.W.A.R.M? Now, this is a first-person shooter on the PlayStation 1. And remember how there's no analog sticks? Well, this is what happens when you create a game with no analog sticks and you don't understand how video games should be played. Your movement here is controlled by the R1 and R2 button. If you hit R1, you move forward. If you hit R2, you move backwards. Now, this gets incredibly confusing while you're trying to just walk normally around the stage. You play as heavily armored space marines trying to destroy some bugs. It feels like a very much an Aliens type of situation. Now you have to open up doors, and you're even going to run into some on-rail shooting scenes in this game. Overall, it doesn't look that bad, but the controls are just so horrible that it's just unforgivingly difficult. If you can get used to this, well then, good for you. You have a pretty fun game to play, but I can't, so I'm gonna have to take a pass. I guess we might as well check out the other Space Marines with a little bit of Doom. Now, this is probably one of the best versions of Doom that were ever made. You could even do System Link for multiple PlayStation 1s for some great co-op action or some deathmatch. And this is the very first time that I ever System Linked any of my game systems together, was just to play a little bit of Doom on the good old PlayStation 1. The sound effects here are phenomenal, and I really like tearing apart these evil demons from hell. This is an extremely satisfying game that is quite long. However, it seems to get a little bit too repetitive in upper levels for me. I hate backtracking with key cards trying to open more doors, and just the overall attitude and personality of the game isn't just quite for me. I just want something to have a little bit more spunk to it. So that's why I have to go with Duke Nukem Total Meltdown. Now, this game is voiced by John St. John, who provides some excellent one-liners that are still fun to listen to this day. And now, I'd much rather be playing Duke Nukem 3D on my Sega Saturn, but that's just because I happen to really like that version. Maybe it's because that's the one I grew up with instead of this game, even though here we have far more levels. There's also secrets around every corner. You could be staring at yourself in the mirror, flushing toilets, shooting aliens in the face, and even catching a little peep show, which is incredibly awesome for those pre-internet days. So you might have bought this game for the bloodshed and the mindless violence, but you'll keep on playing it for the little Easter eggs and things around every little nook and cranny of the game, like a full-fledged arcade, which maybe you can't really play these games here, but later in other Duke Nukem games, they totally rectify that problem. Duke Nukem is a terrific game by all stance. However, mine has a lot of scratches on, so I can't play it for too long before the game completely glitches out. So unfortunately, I have to play something a little more down to earth. Medal of Honor. First of all, I gotta say, I forgot about just how good this game is. It feels like a great run-and-gun game where you destroy the evil Nazis right down to blowing the helmets right off their head. Picking up your rifle is extremely satisfying. Picking up a machine gun, even more so. Mowing people down has never felt so much fun. And one of the things I have to give to the developers is how they created such large open environments that you just don't get lost in. You can just keep pushing forward and making it to the end of the level without getting too confused of where you were and where you came from. This is extremely hard to do in video games to this day, and they managed to pull it off on the freaking PlayStation. Also, aiming is really cool here too. It feels like a Resident Evil game back in the day where you just hold down one of the shoulder buttons and then you can line up your shot just right. This is a terrific game through and through, and it's completely playable without any analog sticks, so I really cannot recommend this one enough. But I just won't stop here. I'm tired of shooting those darn Nazis, and I have to find something new to shoot. Well, how about I turn to ancient Egypt with Powerslave. This is one of the most beautiful first-person shooters on the PlayStation 1. You're running around Egypt and you're slashing things with a knife and even picking up pistols and far better weapons as you play through the game, destroying a lot of scarabs. And you explore the temples here and run into these weird things. This is a pretty fun game that controls excellently, almost too good. You seem to wobble your head back and forth as you run, and it makes me kind of motion sick. Playing this on a big screen TV today, I can't do it for more than about 15 minutes before I'm ready to yak in a bucket, and then I can't play video games for the rest of the day. So even though this game has tons of camels, and I know for the fact that it's really fun to play, I just can't do it anymore. I'm sorry. sorry. So I'm gonna have to try and dig down deep to find one more first-person shooter that perhaps you guys have never played, or maybe never even heard about. So I'm probably gonna have to turn to my import collection. Expert is one of my favorite games for the PlayStation 1. It reminds me a lot of Wolfenstein 3D because it has 2D sprites in a 3D game. And this is something that I am a sucker for every single time. You could also pick your loadouts here. You could have your silenced weapon and some type of shotgun, or maybe even a shotgun and some grenades. There's also a freaking Uzi that you can mow down people, because when you're trying to save some hostages, what better to pick than a freaking Uzi? Now, trying to manipulate your way through the game is somewhat difficult because things do look alike most of the time. However, they do give you a map that feels somewhat competent. You're going to be accessing computers as you play through the game, and the enemies in the game get much harder as you play through. And then you could always unlock more types of weapons as you play through it. So it always gives you that bonus to keep pushing forward on top of it all. Now, this graphically might not be your cup of tea, especially with its really short draw distance. But because I haven't played it to death like Doom and some of the other games on this list, and the fact that it looks so cool and it's super stylized, I just can't get enough of it. And that's why Expert is one of my favorite first-person shooters to play for the PlayStation 1, even without those rotten analog sticks. But of course, that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I had a great time making it. I forgot just how badly these first-person shooters controlled back in the day without the analog sticks. But I was really surprised to see some of the games pulled it off extremely well. Of course we knew Doom could handle it, and Medal of Honor really shined through here. So that some of the other games like Armored Marines Project S.W.A.R.M, just stay away from at all costs. And Shellshock, I really wanted to like it because it was a tank game, but it just couldn't do the job. So in the end, I had to stick to Expert. So what do you think about these games? And did I tell you about one that maybe you never even heard of? And even though I did leave quite a few first-person shooters off this list, make sure you leave a comment down below what your favorite first-person shooter for the PlayStation 1 is, or maybe any other system, so I can cover it in the future. So until later, I will see you again, guys.